and welcome to our very last Principals Network meeting for the 2021 school year. We want to start out this morning by commending you guys for making it through a COVID-19 pandemic school year. That was absolutely crazy in all the ways that it can be, but you guys persevered. You supported your teachers, you supported your students and your families, and you're still showing up for professional development. And so we just thank you guys for being astounding and great leaders in your work. We have an amazing agenda set for you today with an amazing guest speaker. But before we get into the agenda, I want to have my counterpart, Dr. Cruz Delgado, greet you this morning.
Good morning, everyone. And I also echo Dr. Holmes' message to you. You are our heroes, definitely have been on the front line, and we've journeyed together this year, and we've had great participation from you, and your colleagues, your teachers have been fabulous. And so I'm not going to say a whole lot at this current moment other than just welcome. And I know we're all trickling in this morning. I will close with some really great announcements in the end, but without further ado, I just want to congratulate you again for being our heroes throughout the year. So thank you for joining us this morning.
Fantastic. So today, we're going to do some brief introductions of our amazing keynote speaker. We have some good news in the chat that we'll discuss. Our keynote speaker today is John Norlin. You guys have heard from him before this school year, and he's going to close us out, emphasizing being leaders that care well for not just our school communities, but for ourselves. We balance that so that we persevere and have enough goodness floating at the top of us to allow us to continue to be the great leaders that our students and our families and our teachers continue to need. We'll follow up with a few updates to just kind of keep you in the loop of things that are coming, some great opportunities and some directions that we'll be taking moving into the school year. And then we have some very, very important surveys that we would really ask you guys to take the 30 seconds or whatever to complete, primarily because your feedback and your insight, it matters to us. We use it to prepare and to plan and to put things together. And we want to do that with what your needs are in mind. And so we're going to really need your feedback. And so without further ado, we're going to move things forward. As I said, this guy, he needs no introduction whatsoever. You guys have heard from him before. He is at the forefront of all things concerning leadership development, professional wellness, and the full gamut of all of the needs of the stakeholders within our educational communities. In particular, he's coming to us today with the emphasis on how we care for ourselves as administrative leaders and how that turns into and culminates into an impact that catapults and promotes the work that we're doing to improve student achievement, as well as social emotional growth for our staff and students and all things in between. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce to some of you and present to others, John Norlin.
Great to be here. Thank you so much, Dr. Holmes. And yep, kudos. This is the last one. So here we go. How many days left? Nobody's counting, right? You're not counting at all. And not that it ever stops for you all. But I do hope that as we talk about the focus today on well-being and that kind of professional well-being, and I share my screen here, I do take a different stance a lot of times on this. We know that we all have different ways in which we need to take care of ourselves. The stance that I'm going to continue to push on, though, when it comes to our role as leaders, is that there is a big difference between leadership and management. And I think management a lot of times is what grinds on us. It's what can wear on us. It's an important part of the work. But a big part of professional well-being is that when I wake up every single day, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I've got a clear purpose. I know the impact. I'm reminded of that impact. Let's not lose sight of the importance of that purpose piece. So today, as I dig in, and this time will go fast, I hope more than anything else, it's a reminder. We need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. It's a refresher. It's encouragement. I'm on the right track. I've been doing this. I hope it's all of those things as we get ready to once again continue day in and day out to serve the work. Here's what I want to do to start. In the chat, what is your definition of well-being? I'm interested. If you had to define that for yourself, not what others might think, but for you, your own personal well-being, how would you define it? Mental health? Physical, emotional, mental health? Personal and professional peace. I like that. Balanced life. Balance. Balance in life of physical, emotional, professional, personal. What else would you say? Yeah, doing what you need to take care of you. Yeah, self-care is not the same for everybody, is it? I think sometimes it gets this thing of it's like bubble baths and glasses of wine. Well, don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with that. But that may not be it for all. For others, it might be exercise. For someone else, it might be a good book, quiet. For others, it's actually digging in at times and going, I'm going to get after it. I like that, doing what you need to take care of you. Sometimes it means getting away to get ahead, like a vacay. Intentional regard for your return to baseline. So many good things. One thing, just as we get going, I thought was really interesting is, I think it was the Gallup poll that did some studies, and they were looking at work-life balance. We've all heard that before, right? We throw that around a lot, work-life balance. And what they found is that it's actually not as much about work-life balance as it is work-life satisfaction. That when they went into many organizations and they surveyed employees, who do you think in the organization has the best, like role models, the best work-life balance? And what they found is that in many cases, those people that they were identifying actually worked more hours on average than others in the organization. Well, what was the difference? It wasn't work-life balance in terms of sometimes how we view it. It was work-life satisfaction. There is a big difference between the two. So I think about this like well-being piece. I love everyone is different. I want to start with that today. Not everybody looks at this the same way, but I do like that line, doing what you need to take care of you. One of the main indicators that I have, or one of the main things I've seen from many professionals during this time between those that are thriving and those that are surviving, is whether this is there or not. Some people calling it stay connected to your why, but for me, a big part of well-being is that I stay connected to that purpose. That I actually can work through quite a bit more difficulty when I'm in line with that purpose. Don't forget that we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. I'm going to give you an opportunity today to discuss, to reflect, to come back to some of the things we did way back at the beginning of the year, if you remember. We need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. So let's go back to that why. If you ask the average human being, what do you want most in life? Once again, what's one of the number one answers? I just want to be happy. I'm going to come back to this again, collectively as a society. How are we doing with this idea of happiness? Some of you are like, you don't have to go to society. I'm just going to talk about myself, John. Like, how are we doing with this? I've asked students this for 25 years. Working with thousands of students all over the country. It's a part of a presentation that I do on the number of fingers that you have on your hand, if not more. But how many people in your life on a consistent, regular basis would you say are happy? Consistent, regular basis. It's always amazing to me, shocking, and yet it makes sense. The number of students who are hard pressed to even come up with one. I don't have to look far to realize that collectively we're not doing well with the idea of happiness. If you remember, in Latin, they actually use different words for these different levels of happiness. Level 1 is laetus, the happiness of things. No wonder happiness can be so temporary. When we find happiness from things like money, likes on social media, or approval, right? Drugs, food, clothing, as examples. No wonder it doesn't deliver. It is very temporary. I always say laetus is, I'm hungry. I want the pizza. I eat the pizza. I'm happy. For how long? Level 2 is felix. It's the happiness that comes from comparative advantage. I feel happy because I feel like I got the promotion and you didn't. I got recognized and you didn't. I feel happy because I've got a really cool character strong shirt and you don't. And I think I look better than you. And I'm happy. We all know what happens when we play the comparison game. We never win because we're always doing what? I'm not as good as that, but at least I'm better than that. You never win. It's a vicious cycle. No wonder when we find or look for happiness in these areas, does it not deliver? But then we go into level 3. If you remember this, level 3 in Latin is beatitudo. I always say it's like beautiful with an attitude. It's a happiness that comes from seeing good in others and situations and doing good. Connected to it is gratitude, joy, beauty, humility, trust. Yet I don't want to skip past this one too much or too quickly, because I think maybe you can connect with this. Maybe you would agree. I don't think the key to this one is the doing good. Have you ever experienced where you do a lot of good, but you're burning out? I think we got a lot of people doing a lot of good who are burning out right now, and they're not happy. I think the key to this one is doing the more difficult, deeper work of seeing good. And how hard is that as a leader? Especially when times are adverse, when times are tough. It's doing the deeper work of seeing good in certain situations to be able to move forward, seeing good in certain staff members, seeing good in all students. Because the more we do the work of seeing good, we're more likely to continue to what? Do good. Level 4, I've never fully comprehended yet. Still digging into it. They call it sublime beatitudo. It seems really big to me. Here's what I understand about it. It's things that are beyond what we can do by ourselves. Shared vision, shared success. As I queue up this time together today, I think that we have a huge role as leaders when it comes to this. What a beautiful opportunity we have in education to continue to point our staff, those that we lead forward, with that reminder of we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We are in one of the greatest purposeful professions that there is. Let's not lose sight of that. I've always found it interesting, a quote from Todd Whitaker, who's been in this work a long time. He says, we always look to our leaders. People look to their leaders, but in times of crisis, they stare. And if we're not effective in the leadership side of things, when the poop hits the fan, it's really uncomfortable. And it's not just because it doesn't feel good or smell good, or there's nothing good about that image. But there are many during this time that are struggling. And one of the things that we struggle with is that we're not driving forward still that purpose. Let's not forget why we're here to do what we do. Now, it's not enough to just do that, but a lot of times that is what's missing. They're always looking to their leaders, but in times of crisis, they stare. What do we do now? What is the mission? Why are we here? I think this is a good frame because it goes to a big why. What I love about level 3 and 4 verses 1 and 2 is that it actually connects more to purpose. What's interesting is that purpose versus happiness does not promise that things are always going to feel good. What I love about purpose versus happiness is that it doesn't, it requires a lot of hard work. It's not temporary. It's not coming across as easy, but it can deliver on something much greater than happiness. Meaning, that understanding of when I get up every single day, you don't need to tell me why I do what I do. The extra oomph when times get hard that keeps me going. So an opportunity today, we're going to talk about kind of different things, and I'm going to put it through this process: feed, process, and apply. We're going to go at a kind of a quick rate. I'm going to get you into some breakouts a couple times. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to reflect, an opportunity to recenter, an opportunity to come back to those key pieces that we know are so critical in the role that you're in. So some key reminders. Once again, leadership versus management. In the chat, what's the difference? What's the difference between leadership and management? Because they are two different things. In fact, not to go to the answer yet, I'm interested in the chat. You can be really good at one and terrible at the other. The challenge with leadership that makes it so hard is that both are needed in the roles that we're in. Someone says relationships versus technical. I like that. What else? What would you say? What's the difference in your mind between leadership and management? Leadership is influencing others through your visioning because they trust you. Leadership is directing. Management is staff-led. Get one more. Partnership versus top-down. Interesting. Some really great thoughts here. I'm a big believer, keep putting them in there. I'm interested, I want you to see each other's responses. I'm a big believer in like simplifying things as best we can because it's not easy. Simple, but not easy. If I was to define it, I would say this: we lead people, we manage things. Both are important, don't get me wrong, but they are two different things. We lead people, we manage things. There's a lot of systems things in the way that you do that is required in the role that you do, but you could be really good at that and not good at the people side of things. We lead people, we manage things. Task and relationship. So with that, one of the big paradigm shifts I believe that we talked about back at the beginning of the year is that flipping of the triangle. We're not going to spend a lot of time here, but the first breakout room is going to queue up a question coming from this. This is the way that many people view leadership or fall into when times get hard. It is the model of do it or else. Someone has the title, they're the ones that make the decisions, and everybody else does what they say. And then it works, right? I always ask on this top-down type of model, can this work? And usually in training, it's like, no, it can't work. That's actually wrong. Like this type of leader, it can work for a while. You can get a few seasons out of top-down leadership because of your positional power or might. But the problem with this is what? In the chat, what's the problem with leading this way? Do it or else, do it because I said so over time. There's a lot of different problems, so there might be some different responses in the chat. I'm interested. Why, if this is our mechanism of leading, is it sometimes an issue over time? Resistance to the vision. No buy-in. Lack of ownership, because eventually the consequences aren't great enough. Deflates people, creates burnout. Compliance over commitment, it dwindles. Compromises integrity. These are great responses. Here what I'd say. If at the core of our work, leadership, right? We lead people, we manage things. Well, if we lead people at the core of our work, then in leadership is that it's all about relationships. What's one problem leading this way? Ultimately, over time, it will ruin relationships. Don't get me wrong. People will put on sometimes a good face. Okay, yeah, great, great, great. But behind you, when you're not around, They're going to start demonstrating certain behaviors that you don't want them to demonstrate. Behind your back, compromising the vision, undermining the work. Don't get me wrong, there is a time and place for power. A time and place when you guys say, this is what we're going to do. We all know that. If you've been in leadership, you know, it should be one, a last resort. And two, it should be a signal to us that our influence has broken down. So it's a last resort. We got to remind it. Sometimes we got to go there. But two, we should really reflect when that happens. When we feel like we had to do it because I said so, we need to really reflect on those moments. What happened? What can we learn from it? The paradigm shift is the flip. Person with the greatest title no longer is at the top. They position themselves below. Does that mean that they're not important? No, it's just that the overarching role changes. This is more of a servant leadership type of approach. Instead of do it or else, I always love this, there's still a do it. Let's be clear, we got a job to do. This is not fluffy high fives and kudos all the time. We got a job to do and we're going to go after it. And I'm going to be setting that example, but now it flips. And here's the first breakout question. It's do it, but I'm going to go to work every single day as the leader. I'm going to work to meet your legitimate needs. Not necessarily what? Your wants. Went to the store with my 6-year-old the other day and he wanted a lot of things. Did he need all those things? No, so he didn't get them all. But my job as the leader is to make sure that I'm going to work every day to meet your legitimate needs. Well, here's a great question. In the processing, what do people need? When you think about the people that you serve, day in and day out, there's going to be different responses to this. We're going to push you into a breakout, and I have a 2-part question for you in that breakout. What do you believe right now that your people need? And you can define your people. What do your people need? And what is something that you've done this year to go to work to meet those needs? Take about 5 minutes. I'm going to put you in about groups of 4 if we have enough to do that. Erica's going to help me with that. I will stop sharing my screen. What do people need? And what is something that you have done this year, either you and or your team, to go to work to meet those needs? Back, everyone. All right. Well, I was able to jump in briefly to a combo, and what I do know is this, some heavy combos. We reflect on this last year and a half in particular. We think about what people need. This is different kind of conversations. It's always, hard conversations. The work we do in education is not easy, but we know the extra heaviness, the extra collective trauma, stress, anxiety that we've all been dealing with. And then I think about the added importance of then the role that we play, not necessarily on the management side, even though that is huge and going to continue to be, because there's so much that you're managing, but on the leadership side. I'll just make a simple but really strong statement that I think matters a lot, because I think a lot of times those that really dig into the leadership work and know that this, I love digging into the leadership stuff. It's been my life's work. I got a master's degree in organizational leadership, so I can geek out on the leadership stuff. But I think sometimes the work of leadership can be overwhelming. And today, where I want to move is to give you some thoughts that might center a way to make that not feel as overwhelming. Because there's never going to be enough time. There's always going to be the weight that you carry, just like the weight a teacher carries of all the lives of the students they lead. You're carrying the weight of that times whatever, right? Like there's so much weight that leaders carry. If you want to be more effective as a leader, if you show up every single day and ask yourself one single question, what do my people need? And you go to work every single day on, at a minimum, going after 2 basic human needs that all people have, you will become more effective day in and day out as a leader. What are those 2 things? To be paid attention to and to be appreciated. That is a basic human need that all people have, even if they don't tell you, even if they act like they don't want it. To be paid attention to and appreciated. I always quote Mother Teresa in this because I remember the line that she shared. People crave attention and appreciation more than they do bread. A lady who is literally working with people day in and day out in the house for the sick and dying in Calcutta, India. It's a different look at Maslow's, isn't it? You think about it for a moment. People crave attention and appreciation more than they do bread. What if we just went to work every single day at meeting those 2 needs as a part of our leadership work? John, that sounds great in theory. How do we do it? All right, ready? Let's talk. Want you in the chat. What's one of your goals for this year on the leadership side? Could be one that you've already had or one that you have moving forward. Either way, what's a leadership goal that you have? Remember, we lead people, we manage things. This should not be about your master schedule. It needs to be people related. What's a goal that you have as a leader or have had? Using the chat. What would you say? And as people are reflecting, if someone would prefer to or be willing to, on this one, unmute and share, I'd love to hear a thought on this one verbally. Is anybody that would be willing to share one of their goals that they've had as a leader?
Hello. Yeah, I would say as we come back to school, just leading our staff and providing an atmosphere for even differences for mask wearing and being on the same page and making sure that I can bring everybody together so that everybody's comfortable coming back onto campus, knowing that we're going to be having students and that starts from the top and we need to be comfortable and buy into what our purpose is of welcoming the staff and students back on campus. And how do I go about doing that? That's kind of what I got to figure out. But that's one of my goals, is being able to provide the support for it's been traumatic for our teachers and staff, as well as it's going to be for students coming back. And how do we go about that and prepare so that when the students come back, that we're all on the same page.
Well said. Yeah, because rooted in that is a need, isn't there? There's lots of needs within that, right? And a part of that is then not shying away from that work. I love that. Let's look at some of the responses coming in. To champion people who are on our team, celebrate their strengths, honor their differences. To help our team with post-pandemic recovery by providing an environment that promotes emotional healing, appreciate and acknowledge my appreciation for others. As an equity warrior, I plan to support others to focus on how you look at your students and the supports you can provide them. I'm going to meet people, staff, where they are. The needs were so wide this year. Very specific. I love this. I'm going to personally connect with 3 people each day. To be a good role model in the face of uncertainty, crisis. Great responses. Here's where I want to guide us with this. I've never met a leader anywhere that doesn't have goals. You do an exit interview with them at the end of the year. Let's talk about, with all the things that you had to deal with, how many of those big goals happened a lot of times in the way that you wanted. And a lot of times, not a lot. Want to know one reason why? Systems over goals. We all have wonderful goals that don't happen. What kind of systems could we put in place to actually make those happen? Even the example that was just shared out loud, what kind of system could you put in place to make sure that you're bringing in different voices as a part of that, to help make the decision that things are happening at certain times versus, well, I had the goal, but then a million other things happen. Keeping in line with the paying attention, showing appreciation, let me give you some examples of systems over goals. The temperature check. We know that in the classroom, this can be a really effective strategy at all grade levels. Elementary does it much better than middle and high collectively, but it literally can cost an extra 60 seconds as a part of an entry task. Well, what if we did it in the role that we play as leaders? Your next PD, have each staff member hand you a note, or you could do it electronically with how they are doing on a scale of 1 to 5 and why on their way out. What I would say to this one is a required question is their name. A required question is that on a scale of 1 to 5, how are you doing? Optional, why? I have heard incredible, powerful stories of administrator teams that have made this a part of their regular work, and then they meet either right after that meeting or within the next 24 hours. They look at those results, and then they divide up. Who's going to check in with Mr. Bouchard? Right? Who's with Ms. Smith? A lot of times it's who they maybe evaluate, who they're already connected with. And sometimes it's not for a 1. Sometimes it's for a 5. I'm about to finish my master's degree. That's awesome. You stopping by to celebrate that can be powerful, can't it? To pay attention, to show appreciation. What's interesting and where we'll go by the end of this is the power of moments like that. You set something up like this and realize that a good number of your staff are going to already think they're not going to do anything with these. What if you actually do? How much added power does that have when you actually do come down and check in? You send them that note, you jump into a Zoom room. John, this looks like a lot of work. Here's the key. You don't have to check in on everybody because not everybody's putting a 1. It gives you a snapshot, though, of where your staff is at. The powerful story I would give is this. There was a principal and assistant principal team who I had on our podcast, and we were talking about how they had started this with their teachers the year before the pandemic hit. And then they started halfway through the year doing it, their monthly staff meeting. When the pandemic hit, they went to weekly virtual staff meetings, and it just moved from monthly to weekly. And they said it was probably our number 1 rock star teacher who would have always been at a 5 during the normal course of the year. When the pandemic hit, they would have never guessed that she wouldn't have been at a 4 or 5 because she's never been frazzled. She is a rock star. Everything that comes her way, she makes it happen. They do that virtual staff meeting. She's at a 1. Shocked them. They had no idea. It gave them immediate feedback to be able to go and check in on what was going on. She was willing to share what she was struggling with. They were able to give her the support that she needed. They said it literally took about 3 or 4 weeks, and she gradually went from a 1 to a 2, 3 to a 4, and then was back up at a 5. What if they would have missed it? We want to talk about systems over goals. Something like the temperature check or something like it can be a powerful tool that we can use as leaders. And it doesn't even just have to be as building leaders. I mean, we're the district office. If we have any team that we're leading, the temperature check is a low burden system over a goal that you could put into place. Here's another one. I love this one, staff chips. If you do this or something like it, I'd love to know in the chat. Staff chips. I've never known an administrator in a building that doesn't want to connect with their people more. But how many struggle to get out of their office or to get out of their own personal Zoom room into someone, whatever it might be. And we also know this, let's be honest, we naturally gravitate towards certain staff members and we naturally gravitate away from others, not you. I mean, not me. I mean, yet what if we had a more intentional way of connecting? I actually love this. Even if you don't do it exactly like this, systems over goals. Go get 2 jars. They don't even have to be fancy. Some will want to get fancy. Just 2 jars and get a bunch of chips. You can actually buy real cheap wood chips on Amazon. Sometimes it's poker chips. It could be anything. And you write each staff member's name on one or those that you lead. But let's say you got your staff and you put them all in a bucket. And each day, even if you're in a virtual or hybrid type setting, you just grab as a part of your regular process a small handful of chips. And the idea, the goal would be on that day, those staff members, You're looking to take that extra step to connect. If it's in person, maybe it's stopping by their classroom and it's more than just good morning when you're passing by the hall. Maybe you actually take a step in and you ask the second question. Maybe it's dropping into a Zoom room or whatever it is, you go that extra step to connect with that staff member. What if you grab 5 chips and you only got to 3? That's all right. You got to 3. Move those 3 over to the other jar. And does that mean that those are the only 3 people that you connect with during the day? No, of course not. But the idea is this: you now have a more intentional way of knowing who you have connected with during the year. What if you could work your way through those chips 3 times and you know that you connected with every one of your staff members over the course of the year in at least 3 intentional ways? System over goals can be a powerful tool in terms of helping you to achieve those things that we know we want to make happen. What if just daily, we always say we don't have enough time, but the last thing that you did was to send a 1-sentence email that had really intentional, specific feedback or praise to someone on your staff? That's it. 60 seconds, the last thing you do before you shut that computer or turn it off. I wonder what kind of impact that would have by just being consistent and predictable with one thing: system over goals. Here's a huge one that I think takes some of the weight off. And it's a tool that also is a validated, evidence-based strategy for teachers that they can use with their students. You might already do it. It's called EMR, Establish, Maintain, Restore. With the number of people that we're called to lead, it can become overwhelming. It's kind of like triaging. And what you're doing with your staff, for example, is a monthly reflection. It could be more than that, but at least a monthly reflection where you take that roster and you just reflect. Am I at an E, an M, or an R with each of these staff members? Am I in the establishing phase? I still need to establish a relationship with them. Am I in the maintaining stage? That's the ideal. I want to be in the, it still takes work, but I've got one that started. I don't need to repair it. I'm just maintaining. Or am I in the need of restoring? That would be the R. And based on that reflection, it gives you, in some cases, that triage list of these are the staff members that more intentionally I'm going to be going after this week when it comes to establishing still. And what steps could I take, or I need to restore? I can send you, by the way, a solid practice profile on what it looks like to put this into action for those that are not as familiar. But each one of these could be a solid system over goal on how to put some of these that I see in the chat into action. It's far more likely to happen that way. So I want you to hold on to that as I watch the time on a system that you either have in place or a system that you could put in place on the leadership side of things, not on the management side of things. Remember, the goal here is not that I try to do everything and then realize at the end of the year, I did nothing very well. It's better to take one thing, be consistent and predictable with that thing as a part of your leadership, knowing that it is a keystone habit that is going to lead to much more. So before I put you into another breakout room, this is then that inverted triangle. For remember, if you're a part of at the beginning of the year, I believe we discussed this. The reason why it's upside down is to remind us of that general paradigm shift. If one of the goals is, I want to be more effective in my leadership. We lead people, we manage things. As a key reminder, leadership is what? Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Could be positive, could be negative, could be effective, could be ineffective. In fact, it's not a question of whether we are leading or not. It's just a question of whether it's effective or ineffective, helpful or not helpful. Every one of us is leading, whether we realize it or not, even when we don't act. We are leading, we are influencing. The key reminder with this is that leadership in this model is influence, and influence is a skill, which means that every one of us can learn it, be more effective at it, up our games when it comes to our leadership. Why is this important? That a skill can be learned. And that's what leadership is. Well, because it's a direct attack on this age-old quote. You ever heard this one before? My grandpa said it a lot. My grandpa was a good man, but he said this a lot. As I've grown older, I got two really big problems with this age-old quote. Number one, there may be some natural born leaders out there. Can we once again agree on? There are far too few of them for us to rely on. The bigger problem that I have with this quote is if leaders are born, it lets us all off the hook. Because if leaders are born, then I can go like this. I did not get that leadership gene, so I'm good. You step up. And how much of that do we have around us all the time? You do it. I'm not doing it. I'm not a leader. Yeah, you are. And in many cases, the most effective leader in an organization is not the person with the greatest title. The person with the greatest influence may be somewhere right in the middle. And here's where it gets scary. It may not be on the positive side. Sometimes the most effective leaders, the most influential leaders in our organization, they're really good at what they do, may not be on the positive side. Even more of a reason for us to be going to work, to set that example, to identify and meet the legitimate needs of those that we serve and lead each day. So if leadership is influence, and influence is a skill that can be learned, what is then the way to influence? And this is going to set up a conversation for you. I think there's a lot of ways to do this next answer, but the way to influence in this model of servant leadership is to serve and sacrifice. It's to serve and sacrifice for those that we lead. Well, there's a lot of ways to serve and sacrifice. Would you agree? Here are some. They're not all. They're just some of the good ones that are out there. You can fill in your own. But I think that a lot of times, one of the problems with this is that these words get thrown around a lot. There's a basic level of understanding with what it means to serve in these ways. And then I think there's the deeper understanding. Let me give you a couple examples. What does it mean to build influence? Well, serve and sacrifice by being patient. Well, patience is more than waiting. Patience is head over heart. Head, my values, who it is that I want to be, over my emotions. Don't get me wrong, emotions aren't bad, but can they cause us to do things sometimes that we wish we wouldn't have done as leaders? It's learning to think. I remember there was a great image, I think it was back in World War II, as a soldier that was getting ready for battle. And there was like an image of this soldier. It was like training. They're in like some kind of forest type terrain. You may have heard this before. Remember, reminded more than taught. I remember that in this picture, there was like kind of like tracer bullet type things are going over, and they're trying to simulate war for this soldier. And as this soldier is walking through the forest, you can see about 30 feet in front of them on a tree is a sign. And on that sign, nice big letters, all caps, it says, "Think, damn it." I always remember looking at that and going, that's interesting. And it makes a lot of sense. What it's trying to train the soldier to do is this: even though there's all sorts of chaos going on around you, don't forget to think. Because if you don't think, then is that not a great example, metaphor for the role that we play as leaders? We got to train ourselves to think. Head over heart. Patience is a way that we can serve to build influence. Kindness is more than high fives and fluffy compliments. I always love it. It's the WD-40 of relationships. I know it might have been a while, but what's WD-40 do? It makes things run more smoothly and not squeak so much. It probably does more than that. But the WD-40 of relationships, the 5-to-1 golden ratio, you know this, right? For every one constructive or hard kind of message that we have to deliver, there should be 5 positives. What I like to cue in on this is, I think that can sound really great in theory. How easy is 5-to-1? That's hard work. That's intentional work. And I'll go out again and say, that's going to require systems over goals to actually put it into action. If not, we're going to be in a deficit when it comes to that. We're going to have way more withdrawals than deposits. in the relationships of those that we lead. What are ways that we can serve? We can forgive. It's hard to forgive, isn't it, as leaders? You carry so much. It's learning to separate the person from the behavior. I'm not talking about you as a human being. Let's talk about what happened. Forgiveness is letting go of the resentment that's holding who back? You. It's more for you in many cases than it is the other person, isn't it? Forgiveness is a big deal when it comes to learning to serve more effectively as a leader and those that we lead each day. What else? Respect. I always find respect is interesting because if I was asked everybody here to define respect, if you were to ask your staff, we'd probably have as many different definitions of respect as there are people, which sometimes causes a problem in classrooms. Would you agree? Well, the student was disrespectful based on whose definition? The one that you grew up with in your home that may not look anything like that student's home and what respect is in that home. Have we even clearly defined what respect looks like in our own community so that is it a shared community agreement or is that just something that you said, this is what respect is? What I like on this one as a clarifying is treating others like they're important because you actually believe they are important. What I love about this one is, what does it mean to treat different people who have different needs and backgrounds like they're important? It's not always the exact same way. What does it mean to serve and sacrifice? It means to be honest. It's more than just telling the truth. It's being free from deception. I can't be one way with a certain group and a different way and with others and say that I'm being honest. I can't say some things in front of certain people and different things and say that I'm being honest. Am I living an undivided life? I'll go through this more quickly. What are ways that we can serve and sacrifice? We can stay committed. It's sticking to your choices. Here's the key. Even when it is hard, even when it is inconvenient. Dr. Holmes and I were in a session once where someone who I admired their work for 30 plus years was off in the comments that they were making. One of the hardest things that I've done in a long time. I had to hold that person accountable and to speak up because head values who I know I want to be, what is most important over heart, which said, this is going to be scary. This is going to cause friction. You don't want to do this. Don't do it. Don't do it. But my head said, you need to do it. It's sticking to your choices, even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient. How can we serve and sacrifice? We can be humble. It's an absence of pride and arrogance. But here's what I love about this as a reminder when we go into this next breakout. I think a lot of times humility is looked at the wrong way. I think there are different angles of humility that don't get talked about enough. I love this quote. If you think humility is for the weak, try being humble for a week. You have to say that 2 or 3 times. Being humble is not being a doormat and people walk all over you. Being humble means that you could be as fierce as a lion or a pit bull when it comes to standing up for what you know is right. Why is that humility? Think about it. When you stand up for what you know is right, it opens you up for what? Attack, comments, and not everybody's willing to take the hits, are they? How critical is humility to serving and sacrificing the work each and every day? Finally, in this short list, what is a way that we can serve and sacrifice? Once again, we can go to work to meet the legitimate needs day in and day out of those that we serve, not necessarily the wants. We're going to go to work day in and day out to meet their needs. So we should be asking ourselves and our people all the time, what do people need? What do your students need? Well, I don't know. Well, I can give you 2 things that they're always going to need: to be paid attention to and to be appreciated. If you do those 2 things consistently, you're going to find out a lot more of what they need. So we think about leadership as influence, and the way to influence is service and sacrifice. And how do we serve and sacrifice? If you remember, it comes down to that love piece. But once again, it's not feelings-based love. It's choice-based love. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to put you into a breakout group. I'm watching that time, but here's what I want you to discuss in that breakout group. If it's systems over goals, I gave you some great examples. You could steal one of those if you want to. You could use it to queue up another idea of what you could put in place. What is a system when it comes to that relational side? We lead people, we manage things that you either have in place currently or that you want to start putting in place to more consistently connect, to pay attention and to show appreciation to your people. Systems over goals. What is something that you're already doing or something that you could put into place to more intentionally connect as a leader? Erica, let's do 5 minutes again. Could be the same groups because they've already, if it allows you to do that, where it's like, hey, remember the same groups, that'd be perfect. And then we'll bring you back at 5 after. Goes fast. So when you think about that, in terms of the systems over goals, I want to encourage you in this. One of my goals by the end of this session is to get us thinking about how can we take the weight that we can carry as leaders and make that more manageable. There's, once again, never going to be enough time. There's always going to be more that we can do. How can we be more intentional in the work that we're doing and get the most, right, impact from the work that we are doing? Systems over goals is one, right? We're going to all have the great goals in the world, but let's take one, let's put it into action. Have that be a keystone habit. Because I'm doing that consistently, predictably, it's going to lead to more. So that's one thing. Here's another simple idea. We have a million things that are on our to-do list, don't we? Our to-do lists drive our lives. If I showed you my planner from last week, I've got 100 things on my to-do list. You know what's missing a lot of times? The to-be list. Like, where am I writing on there? Spend 15 minutes with my son right when I get home playing catch. And guess what happens when I don't put it on there a lot of times? It doesn't happen. I love this simple strategy that connects to what we're talking about here, to pay attention, to show appreciation. And it's simply using the tools that we already have to start to leverage what we know is important. It could look like a lot of different things, but if I was to ask you right now, write down 3 to 5 things immediately that come to mind. You don't have to do this. You could do this, with a visual exercise, but you could come up with things immediately. The bottom of your paper, 3 to 5 things. Boom, 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 boom. Those are things, John, that I need to do in the first 5 minutes after this session. Well, what if we didn't stop there though? And I said at the top, what are 2 to 3 things that you want to be today? But once again, the words are not enough. They can become fluff, overused. Let's be more specific. What if it would be something that would take 10 minutes or less to actually complete? A tip that I learned from Dr. Jen McCauley, who's been doing leadership consulting work for 25 plus years, is to use the technology that we have, our calendars, to our advantage. So if it's a system over goals, and I know that I want to connect using those staff chips, I could build in at a specific time during the day. I'm just going to make up a random time, 2 to 2:30 p.m. I'm going to dedicate to that, and it's about those intentional connections. I put it on my calendar because it's a to-be list items. You know what a lot of times doesn't happen? When someone reaches out and they're like, hey, John, can you meet? I was thinking about 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock today, can we meet? And I say, no, I already have something. You know what they usually don't say? Well, what do you have at 2? Most people don't question that. I'm not going to say that never happens, but most people do not question that. And so what if I started to be more intentional by adding my to-be list, the thing that actually is foundational to that leadership and management work on the leadership side? I know a professional as a school counselor that literally just added one thing to her to-be list that was missing. She added it into her to-do list. So the to-be list. She said it changed her entire year, the trajectory during the pandemic. What she had lost was that intentional connection. They were in hybrid. She used to go out into the hallways and greet students as they're coming by. And she realized she hadn't done that because she had a million things on her to-do list. She said it literally changed in 15 minutes. She forgot what she had been missing. Students were coming by. Students that were on her caseload were like, "Hi, Mrs. Whoever." And she goes, "It was just literally one thing that I added, and it changed everything for the rest of the year." Isn't it interesting sometimes how it's not actually that complicated? It's simple, but it's not easy, or once again, everybody would do it. System over goals. I saw this in the chat. I hope this might be some encouragement in regards to how we could be more effective as leaders. If you have read this in the chat, or sorry, if you've read this, great. If you haven't, you saw it in the chat. I believe the title, it's by Chip and Dan Heath. You need to read this. I think every leader needs to read this. They talk about the science and the power of moments. And here's just like from a high level, a couple key like items related to it. So the power of moments. There are 3 situations which most deserve our attention as leaders. So the idea here that I love about the power of moments is that you don't have to get every moment right as a leader for at the end of the year, your staff to go, "Man, she was an awesome leader. That was a great year." Even within the context of the things that are outside of our control. And I think a lot of times we feel like we have to get every moment right. And we can wilt under that pressure. We actually don't have to get every moment right. Disney has got it figured out. You're like, "John, I don't like Disney. I have a really bad experience." I'm just saying, they literally break down the power of moments here or there. The 3 situations that deserve most of your attention when it comes to like going after the power of moments are transitions, milestones, and pits. You could literally have a conversation as a leadership team. Let's talk about the different types of transitions, students and staff, even families, that we know are during the year. What if we put a little extra attention to those moments? How are we doing when it comes to certain transitions? What could we do to be more effective? What are we doing when it comes to milestones? And you can identify what milestones are. What are the different milestones that you can identify? How are we doing with those moments as leaders? And then this is a big one. What kind of plan could we have in place? Things that are ready to mobilize, to act upon when pits happen. Because sometimes when a pit happens, and we act upon it effectively, it can have actually an even greater impact, can't it? It's a different perspective when things actually go wrong or things don't go well, and we actually say, "No, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to fill a pit." The simple example at Disney is if you spill something or your kids spill something on themselves and it's in the little like food area, there are people who literally are hired to fill that pit. That's literally their job. I had someone in a Texas conference that we were at who said, "That was actually my job. I used to work at Disney. And if a kid spilled something, I would come out and say, 'What t-shirt size do you wear?' And they would give them like a free Disney shirt." And their job literally was to fill that pit. Now, we're not just talking about t-shirts. We know that these pits can be huge. How can we be more intentional at filling those pits? If you can capture meaning in these instances, the research shows is that they can actually become extraordinary. It takes the weight off. I wonder what would happen if we had conversations as leaders about these different situations and how we could be more effective. I believe it's in California. I don't know if you ever heard of the Magic Castle. Magic Castle Hotel. It's one of the top rated hotels in all of California. Right up there with some of the most expensive hotels in the world, yet the Magic Castle Hotel they talk about in the book is nothing to write home about. Kind of looks like an old castle. The rooms are okay. The pool is not some Olympic size, like beautiful pool with certain water. It's like a basic pool. It's got like a fence that goes around it. But there's something interesting about the Magic Castle. At the pool, there's a sign. And it says Popsicle Hotline. And there's a phone. And if you pick up that phone, someone will answer. And the flavors are right there on the wall. And if you say grape within a very short period of time, someone will come out with a silver platter, white gloves, and will deliver to you at the pool that popsicle. One of the highest rated hotels in all of California during the time that this book was written. Why? Because everybody talks about it. Here's my question. What did it cost them? Did it cost a lot of like funding to buy popsicles? No, it took some intentionality. It carried over that keystone habit into really focusing on creating more and more power of moments within the organization. Everybody was looking to create those types of moments and different things that they did. Power moment is a great way as a leader when we think about reflecting at the end of this year and how we can be more effective on the leadership side. Let's have a conversation about what we're doing with transitions, milestones, and pits. All right, I'm going to end with a little bit more of a heavy hitter. I think a lot of times we will talk about all these wonderful sounding things, but one of the problems is we don't talk enough about what gets in the way. That sounds great, John. You haven't walked in my shoes this last year. Nobody says that the work that we do as leaders is easy. It's hard work. It's incredibly hard work. Well, let's talk for a minute about what gets in the way. I think one of the things that gets in the way is what we would call the 4 big lies. I've never met a human being, adult or young person, who doesn't live in one or more of these lies. What gets in the way? Well, let's talk about it. As a part of this, I would say the key here is to live your truth, reflect on your lies, because we all have them. Well, to go to the truth piece in the chat, the last thing that I'll ask you to do other than the exit thing, how would you fill in the blanks to this? And you don't have to type out the whole statement. You could just put the 2 blanks. A way to pull out someone's truth is this. I want to use my influence. Leadership is influence. I want to use my influence to blank because I believe blank. What would you say to that? The key here is to live your truth, reflect on your lies. We're going to hit the lies in just a second. What is your truth? In this moment, my response to this as you're processing would be this. I want to use my influence to leave people better than I found them every single day because I believe that all people have worth. What might you say to this prompt? I'd love to see a couple responses in the chat. I love that, Dr. Holmes. I want to use my influence to heal because I believe all people need grace. I want to use my influence to help because I was trying to figure that one out. Sorry, to help students because they deserve it. Thank you. Well said. By the way, I would encourage you, this could be at the end, it could be at the beginning of the year. This is actually a great prompt and exercise to do with your staff and give them a chance to share. Give some the opportunity to share their response out loud. Some of the most powerful staff meeting experiences I've had in leading them have been giving educators the opportunity to reflect upon and then share their answer to this statement and why. I want to use my influence to give students hope because I believe in youth. I want to use my influence to motivate because I believe everyone has gold worth digging for. So good. Well, I'm watching that time closely. You've got that truth. Live your truth, reflect on your lies. Here's the piece that I would push you on to think about, to reflect on, and that is what gets in the way. I think the 4 big lies get in the way quite regularly. I've never met, once again, someone who doesn't live in one or more of these lies. Big lie number 1 has to do with being perfect. Big lie number 2 has to do with approval. Big lie number 3 has to do with failure. And big lie number 4 has to do with shame. Big lie number 1, if I don't meet expectations set by myself or others, then I'm not enough. There's nothing wrong with having big goals, right? High standards. But when I find my identity connected to whether I hit those or not, that's dangerous. That's a lie. Big lie number one. Big lie number two has to do with approval. It goes like this. I need people to approve, accept, or like me to be enough. No, you don't. Nothing wrong with wanting people to like you, but when you find your identity connected to that, that's a problem. Because you can't control that, can you? Especially if you have to put humility into action or honesty into action. Big lie number three has to do with failure. It's the one I've grown into in life. I've moved from number two and graduated to number three. Yay for me. Those who fail, including me, are unworthy of love and deserve to be punished. Wow, that sounds harsh, doesn't it? Usually those people that are critical of others are also critical of who? Themselves. It's the idea, the lie that I cannot fail. If I fail, then I'm not enough. It's a lie. Big lie number four has to do with shame. I am who I am. My flaws define me. I cannot change. What I would leave you with today, instead of some fluffy act of kindness or positive quote, is this. When you think about your lie in the chat, which one are you? Just put 1, 2, 3, or 4. Which one do you struggle with the most? I told you mine. Used to be 2, now it's 3. I want you to see what people are putting. And then my closing piece would be this. How does your lie get in the way of your truth? As we close down a year, we can reflect on that one as we transition to continuing to lead and serve. If we can get to the bottom of that, how does my lie get in the way of my truth? We're going to be way more effective as leaders. We're going to be more well when it comes to our well-being. Purpose is greater than happiness. Systems are greater than goals. Live your truth. Reflect on your lies. Appreciate what you all do. If someone hasn't told you, and I know this group did at the beginning, we're grateful for the work you do every single day. It's hard work. We see you and we appreciate you. Thank you for the time to be with you today.
Thank you, John. Virtual
That's John.
applause to John. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to squeeze in a couple of minutes here for our group. If you have any questions for John, we invite you to unmute yourself and ask questions. We're all a family, a team family here. Hopefully you're comfortable to do that. If not, you can put that in the chat. But John, any questions for John from the group?
I got a quick question about the serve. The E was for establish, R for restore. What were the other ones?
Yeah, establish, maintain, restore. And what I can do, I'll make a note. I'll send it to the team here. I've got a practice profile that I can send you that actually breaks it down, gives examples for each, and actually a way that you can build it into even PLCs that teachers can do with students. So Dr. Clayton Cook did a lot of research on this, I think with Dr. Diana Browning-Wright, who's out of California. But I can send you that practice profile so they can send it out, and it's a better way of explaining it. But it's establish, maintain, restore is the 3 letters. Yep.
Thank you.
One thing I forgot, we are going to be doing a principal mastermind series this next fall. I talked to the team before this. We'll send out more information on that. I always say that this type of thing, this kind of almost mini conference, it's for everybody. The mastermind is not. It's about when people look at this and go, I'm ready to go to a whole nother level with being like pushed on this. We finished one this last spring. I'll say this, in one of our last sessions, our actually last session is on Thursday for this group. It goes over 5 months. Once a month we meet. One of the questions is, what's one of the hardest things you've ever done? And it was like a part of like an entry to like a team building piece in their small groups. And there's principals from all over the country that join. And the answer, this. Like the process that we like took them through because of how much growth came from it. So we'll share with you, but if you're someone who's like, I can't get enough of this, I want to go deeper on the leadership side, we are going to be leading one of those this next fall and can share opportunities on how to connect.
Wow. I mean, everybody wants to know that we're going to work on uncovering our values and restoring ourselves, right? But the idea of going through something even harder than, what some of us have gone through this year, it's a scary thought. But at the same time, John, when I hear you speak, it reminds me why we get into this work, why we work with students, why we need to have these tough conversations. And somebody asked me like, oh, who are you listening to? And I said, listen to John Norlin. I love him because he cuts out the fluff and he gets straight down to remind us what the values are and to push ourselves to look into what our truth is, right? Like you were saying. So, I mean, I'm so thankful to hear you because the year's wrapping up. We all need that renewed strength and that reminder of why we need to finish the year strong, why we need to lead our teachers that are exhausted and overwhelmed, and our students that are underwhelmed and unmotivated. And how do we use this summer to look into what our values are, and how do we lead our teachers to rejuvenate themselves and to find that purpose, right? And so super thankful that we're ending our principal leadership, meeting today and discussing how to renew our values looking into the summer. So I know Dr. Cruz was going to wrap it up, and I just, wanted to personally say thank you because we really needed this. I needed this. I'm thinking everybody else did, but
thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Renee.
And I think it's a wonderful way for us to close out the school year with just a reminder of who we are, why we do what we do, why we show up every day, but to also learn and understand that we don't have to sacrifice ourselves and make ourselves martyrs in the process of serving and loving the school communities that we serve, and that there is a balance to be stricken that allows us to achieve all of the objectives that we seek. And so, John, you are always the bomb.com.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes.
So we're actually going to be working with John in the next coming school year, and Dr. Cruz and I will kind of give you guys a preview of some of the work that he's going to help culminate us through for the beginning, or actually throughout the next school year for the entire year. And so we're going to get a lot of this good training. Dr. Cruz and myself will be participating in that mastermind that he talked about. And if you guys want more information about that, we're happy to just weigh in with how many of you want to participate in that and work with John to see about getting you guys set up for that. Okay, so before we end for the day, we just have a few, maybe 5, maybe 10 more minutes we need with you to make some announcements. And so we just talked well about taking care of ourselves as leaders and really going introspective and looking at what we need to be the best possible leaders we can be from a wellness perspective. And now we have Rescue a Generation, who's here to help us talk a little bit about how we generate a similar response in our students. And so I'm going to pass it over right now to Jose. He's going to talk to us a little bit about that, and then we'll close out for the rest of the our time together this morning.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Holmes. And thank you, John. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed our time here. And thank you guys for letting us spend a little bit of time with you. I won't be long at all. My name is Jose. I'm the founder and CEO of an organization called Rescue a Generation. We provide coaching and empowerment to at-risk and high-risk students, or at-promise and high-promise students, so that ultimately we can give them a little glimpse of hope. So I'll give you in a nutshell what we do, and then I would just like to play a short video, and then we'll have a link we'll put in the comment section. I'll have Brandon put that link in the comment section. If you want more information, you could just fill out that link and we'll follow up with you. But we do several things. Number one, every person on our team are highly competent and passionate individuals that are motivational speakers, not just here in California, but around the nation. And so that's one of our kind of main things that we do in this digital world. I was telling Dr. Holmes yesterday, I feel like we did really well to transition digitally, so much so that in December, we did a virtual assembly on YouTube Live. And with Victor Valley High School, the principal happened to see it and loved it so much that they went back and told 5 other principals the next day about this assembly. Since then, we have now done all 5 of those school assemblies. And so if you're looking, as students are trying to transition back into school, if you're looking for a team of people that can come and just speak life and motivate students, we would love to be a resource for you on that. But our main thing that we do is life coaching. We are certified life coaches that we could go do this for anybody, entrepreneurs, businesses, but our passion is young people. And so we have a 10-week life coaching program that we support up to 30 students per semester. So 60 students per school year. It includes 2 different components. Number 1, rethinking what success looks like. Number 2, reconnecting for success, all about relationships. Our life coaching program actually touches all 5 boxes of the social emotional learning components. And we are very, very intentional of allowing students to do that introspective work. We know the pandemic has been hard on students. And we're excited that we're properly positioned to be able to help them navigate through transitioning back on campus. The cool thing about us is that we can go both digital and in person, and have been able to do that all throughout the pandemic. So we have a video curriculum that we use that we created ourselves. It's very relevant to young people. We speak their language, and it's been pretty exciting. And the last thing is this RECT video curriculum. We've provided a 52 video resource for you. I've heard about schools that are doing like a SEL time period or a class period, right? Well, we have 52 60-second videos, literally like an Instagrammable size or a YouTube size video that you could just play, and it would be a great conversation starter. And so we have those things available as well. All I'd like to do now is just play this short video that'll show you about one of the celebrations that we did at Rainey Intermediate. And by the way, let me say this, our target, I think our curriculum is a little too mature for elementary schools, but middle school and high schools, I think it fits perfectly. We did this with Rainey Intermediate in Corona, and a part of this is a celebration, and then you'll hear the testimony from the actual principal that we worked with as well. So let me pull this up, and then here we go.
They needed something more than just what they got on a daily or in their routine. They needed to express that kind of gratitude and joy. See, they watched their students, and even they themselves walked away with hope. Today, parents believe in themselves more. Students believe in themselves more. We believe in ourselves more. We believe that what we are doing is actually making impact, that we won't be beat by social distance and distance learning, that these students' lives can still be changed.
The investment, the return of the investment that we see, not just in our kids, but the staff, the culture, the parents, bringing that connection. I think having Rescue a Generation and Success Club be a part of this journey shows our kids that they're not in this alone, shows our parents. They see that family unit, they see that we're there for them, and it carries on. It's only been a couple of years, and we've seen great success. So I just think that support system that we put out there for these kids, the families, and even our staff. So as a site leader, I just see the impact it makes on the entire culture and climate of our campus. And it is very well worth the investment that I will talk to any principal or any site leader that you will see a turnaround by bringing Rescue a Generation Success Club onto your campus.
She struggled so much in school. My first interaction with her, she just cussed me out, but she got kicked out of the class, you know. And having you guys on campus and her knowing that you guys were going to be there, she at the end was your MVP and was so vulnerable to share so many personal things that during the summer, when we met during the summer, all totally virtual, she was like always there. And I've been able to talk to her mom a couple times, and she's still doing well emotionally and with connections. And so, you know, even if you save one kid, it's worth it. The money that we put out for even if it's one kid to change their life. But this girl not only changed her own life, her mom's life and her friends that were around her.
Student who comes to mind, his parents were reaching out to me, his mom was reaching out at the beginning, just expressing concern because he was really struggling being motivated to come to school, and you're seeing his attendance was really lacking, and he was just having a rough go and some difficult things going on at home. And I think once getting him into Success Club, he started coming regularly, and I want to say it was around week 3 when he really started to come out of his shell and really participate, and he was doing the essays and the different prompts, and now he was one of our students at today's celebration who received a reward for his essay.
Success Club, since they've been on campus, have brought like tremendous connection to our students. Definitely giving our students a space, that they don't normally have to share their story. That's been a big one today, and really seeing the impact we had our celebration today, and the looks on our kids' faces. I haven't seen anybody, it might be social distancing, but I haven't seen any student as happy to be back on campus, feeling good about what they've done, what they've accomplished, in a long time.
So thank you all so much for your time. And the link is in the comments. If you want more information, please fill out that link. We would love to connect with you, your school, and find out how we can partner with you. Thank you so much, Dr. Holmes.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Jose. And I guess the only thing that I would add to that is just like, as we all are working on getting staff and students back to school and creating a new normal for ourselves, I think it would be beneficial just to have some partners to kind of help take some of the, how encumbering that process could be off of teachers and administrators by providing that supplemental support. So, however you guys choose to go with them or not, it's totally up to you. So now we actually have Renee Ramsey, who's going to explain and shed some light on a Unity conference that we have coming up here in about a month or so. And Renee, are you ready to tell us about this fabulous experience?
I am. So, we got to hear John speak and rejuvenate us. And then we got to hear Rescue a Generation talk about how we talk to students, right? But we also have this thing called parents, right? And you all have been working a lot with parents this year, hearing the good, the bad, the ugly, but working on the partnerships with our parents and our families at home. And even though Dr. White retired as our county superintendent, she is still continuing the work with her nonprofit. And she had contacted the county office, not just Riverside County, but San Bernardino County, San Diego County, and nonprofits in Southern California to create this conference called Back to School in Unity. And we have a keynote speaker, Miles McPherson. Look him up if you haven't heard about him yet, but they want to talk to families directly about how do we return to school in person this coming fall in Unity. And the focus of our keynote speakers is talking about how families can look at each other's strengths instead of our differences, and returning from, the pandemic of everything that's happening racially in the world right now, what's happening with COVID-19 and people's different opinions, but to come back to school and unite as a community. And so this is created for families. And even though there's going to be a keynote speaker, there's going to be breakout sessions to kind of bring up these conversations in a safe way among families. But the focus is about strengths from within and accepting each other and coming together for our students, right? And families are going to walk away with a calendar of activities they can do at home as a family to build unity and to work on healing and moving forward and being partnerships with each other. So the link is going to be in the chat box for you guys. Please share this out. We will send you the flyers and everything that you can share with your families. It is available in English flyer, but also in Spanish. We are going to have Spanish translation and even ASL translation. If there's special requests, reach out to us personally. But we also want to make sure that we include our families in their growth also, because we've known this year that they are our partners big time in our student success. So if you have any questions, send me an email. It's all on this flyer. And thank you for being here today. It takes a village, right? All of us working together. So I know Dr. Cruz is on here, but she might be on her phone. We want to respect your time. We know it is after 10:30 and you guys have so much to do, but on this next slide, there is a Principal Network inquiry survey. There are two different ones. So there's the elementary and the secondary one. We need your feedback, like Dr. Holmes was talking about at the beginning. So if you guys could take just a few moments to make sure that you complete those so we can get that feedback and work towards building an amazing program for next year. What you guys need. Did you want to give some input, Dr. Holmes?
Yeah, so just really quick, the two survey links here have to do with us planning the scope and sequence and the professional learning opportunities for principals as we move into the 21-22 school year. So we absolutely would appreciate it if you guys fill that one out. But then on the next slide, there's actually a survey that we would like for you guys to complete for feedback for today's meeting. So there's actually two surveys, and I think the links for both surveys are in the chat. And we would just ask that you take a few minutes to fill that out before you leave. And we wish you guys a safe and restful summer. We realize that some of you guys are ending the end of May, some of you guys not until the middle of June. But whenever it is that you break, we pray that you would take some time to really take care of yourselves, to allow yourselves to be replenished and refreshed. And we look forward to seeing you guys in the new school year. So have a blast.